The Phantom Troupe are all living on borrowed time. Hello and welcome back to Suck War Central. Today we're going to be talking about the Phantom Troupe and how tremendously cooked they are. Togashi's been throwing up death flags for this group and its members left and right since this arc started, and a lot of them are in very bad positions. So, let's go through every member of the Spiders and put them onto this here safety tier list. Starting with Illumi and Kaluto, I honestly think these two are going to be fine for the foreseeable future. They were last seen with Botabai and Ginta of the Zodiacs, and those two are going to do everything they can to keep tabs on the Zoldycks. Heck, they might even have just taken these two into custody, since Illumi was willing to comply with what he thought was an arrest. If that's the case, being guarded by Zodiacs is probably the safest anyone could be on this boat. Additionally, Illumi is apparently a VVIP, yet he's chosen not to chill in the VVIP area where we know Hisoka is. I'm not sure why he decided this. Maybe he's not actually looking for Hisoka at all? Topic for another video. But in any case, they're not together, and that's good for Illumi and Kaluto. And possibly most importantly of all, neither of the Zoldycks has split up. So for those reasons, we're gonna put them in the S tier. Next up, we've got Benolanov, and I honestly think the exact opposite about this man's safety. First of all, he's alone on tier 1 with Hisoka. That right there is a terrible spot to be, especially since Benolanov knows full well that Hisoka is a terrible matchup for him. One blast of gum and he can't dance, which means he can't really use his Nen. Second of all, Hisoka always knows when people are watching him, and he's got this little line about how he wants to play with himself, making it clear he knows there's a second Hisoka. So, unless Benolanov either leaves the area, which goes against Chrollo's orders, and which Hisoka might not even let him do, or unless Benolanov receives immediate backup, Hisoka is probably going to kill him extremely soon. What's more, Hisoka isn't even the only person after Benolanov. Henry and Zakuro took a terrifyingly short amount of time to come to the conclusion that the Phantom Troupe probably killed Lynch. Given a little more time, some actual investigating, and maybe some Nen abilities from other members of the GU family, who's to say they can't figure out exactly which of the spiders it was? So yeah, Benolanov really has enemies all around him. If he stays on tier 1, he's a dead man walking, but if he heads back down to the lower tiers, he has to contend with the GU Mafia. The two things I could say in his favor are that the Mafia are largely composed of chumps compared to the Phantom Troupe, and Chrollo is headed to tier 1, but both of these are pretty flimsy. A bad matchup could still do Benolanov in, and Chrollo isn't just going to have a free pass up to tier 1 like Benolanov had. With all that in mind, Benolanov is going straight to the C tier. Next is Shizuku, and if I'm being honest, Girly Pop is not thriving. First of all, she's part of Chrollo's team, which probably means she's trying to get to tier 1. That puts her on the same tier as Hisoka, and like Benolanov, she has a bad matchup against him. But what's much more problematic than that is that wherever she is, Shizuku is alone. Nen battles depend almost as much on matchup as on skill, and having a partner as backup drastically reduces the chances of a bad matchup occurring. That's why being alone is the single biggest risk factor for any Nen user. What's more, Shizuku isn't even as combat-centered as most of the other Phantom Troupe members. While that alone would be enough for me to condemn her to C tier, there's one more thing that makes it just a little bit worse. Shizuku's fortune, as written by Chrollo, states, "Solitude should your greatest fear be, lest upon your lonesome form he creep." Now, there's a whole discussion as to whether Neon's fortunes are even valid anymore. They're supposed to expire after 1 month after all, but despite that, Shalnark's fortune came true. So who's to say Shizuku's safe from hers? There's also a line suggesting she'll die in a treasure chamber, and guess what? Chrollo's going after treasure. Coincidence? Maybe, but it's something to keep in mind, and like I said, she's already been sentenced to C tier. Heading to the exact opposite part of the Black Whale, let's discuss Franklin. Now, what's the one thing I said the Phantom Troupe shouldn't do? Be alone. And what's Franklin doing? Sitting by himself and eating a burger. Now, this puts him in a prime position to be picked off by Hisoka, or so I would have said if you were on a higher tier. Franklin is all the way down on tier 5, which could not be further from Hisoka, and Hisoka loves his finery. I honestly can't imagine him going down to such a dirty, dingy place. Of course, Franklin is still by himself and still has threats to contend with. For one, the Cha'ar family plan on backstabbing the spiders, but much more importantly, Franklin is in the Heili family's hunting grounds. If they were to gang up on them, he could conceivably be in trouble. Plus, even if he won a fight, he would probably cause a ton of collateral damage. That's just how his ability works, after all. If he does that, he's gonna attract attention and could end up with a Zodiac or two trying to bring him down. But that's a lot of what ifs, and there are a couple points saving him from C tier. For one, Franklin is not actively antagonizing anybody like a lot of the other spiders seem to be doing. For another, Nobunaga is maybe heading over to get him, so he won't be alone for long if Nobunaga makes it. That's why I'm putting him in B tier. Next, let's talk about Finks and Phaeton. Now, on the face of it, these two look unsafe. I mean, they're on their way to kick Morena's door down. That is straight for danger. Sure, it's a fight they might win, but it's danger nonetheless. Surely they deserve to be in the B tier. Well, no. I'm actually gonna make the case that Finks and Phaeton belong in the A tier. First of all, they're not alone. They seem like they'll complement each other decently well in combat, and they can share their expertise of Nen. Additionally, these are two of the most combat-oriented Phantom Troupe members out there. They are absolutely built for this. I truly cannot see the Heili bringing them down if they roll up to their hideout. Now, there's one reason in particular I think they're both quite safe. Nobunaga gave them bad intel about Yokotani's ability. Yes, I think Nobunaga messing up is going to take the spiders out of danger. You see, Nobunaga told them that attacking Yokotani is what triggers his ability, but this is incorrect. Yokotani can actually trigger this ability just by introducing himself, and it works based on the crimes the targets have committed. And guess what? Unlawful entry to the Heili hideout is apparently a crime. Because of all this, ideally you'd kill him before he introduces himself. But guess what? Finks and Phaeton have decided to do the exact opposite. Their plan is to wait for the Heili to attack first. Do you see the problem with that? That will allow Yokotani to activate his ability with no interference and kick Finks and Phaeton right out of the hideout, just like they did to Nobunaga and Henry. So those two are currently set up to completely avoid the fight they're headed toward, and that's why I think they're safe. Now, you might say to this, why on earth would Togashi do the same thing twice? That would be super boring. And I answer that Togashi is the master of making things that should be super boring into very interesting character studies. Just look at Meruem and Komigi's Games of Gungi. In any author's hands, any other author that is, that would be a total snooze fest, but Togashi makes it work. Another counterargument is that the Heili might opt to fight rather than try to send the spiders away peacefully, to which I reply that this is a terrible idea and they should know it. Time is on the Heili's side. The more time passes, the more levels they'll have, the stronger they'll become, and the better they'll do against the spiders. If they can directly avoid fighting multiple members of the Phantom Troupe, for the time being, they will. So yeah, they are headed right for enemies, so I can't put them in S tier, but I honestly think Finks and Phaeton are solidly in A at the moment. Now, Machi is the spider we know least about. Togashi, I am dying for an update on what baby girl could have possibly been doing this whole time. We know two things about her activity on the Black Whale. One, she is by herself. Two, she is in a standard passenger cabin on Tier 5. Now, we can't be sure, but her location being a standard cabin while everyone else is out and about seems to imply that for the time being, she is chilling and away from any action. Given that, her situation is probably about the same as Franklin's, so until we learn more, I'll give her a shaky slot in the B tier. Our penultimate member to talk about is my penultimate favorite spider, Nobunaga. Once again, we have a guy who's committed the cardinal sin of the spiders this arc, going off by himself. Now, at least Nobunaga is on the lower tiers and nowhere near Hisoka, but I would argue he's in the most danger from the Heili out of anyone. First of all, he, like Finks and Phaeton, is heading right for them to pick a fight. Second of all, they've seen how he fights. He's lost the element of surprise, and he is the most appealing target for them to pursue right now. Third of all, he's sort of disarmed. I mean, yes, he has a sword, but according to Phaeton, it's a makeshift fake sword, which does not sound promising with regards to its combat effectiveness. So, essentially, he's plunging right into danger against opponents who know more about him than he knows about them, by himself, with a fake sword. That just sounds incredibly stupid to me. The one saving grace I can give this guy is that he might be headed back to pick up Franklin first, and them teaming up would certainly improve both their odds of survival, but even so, with what we know about Nobunaga, I'm gonna have to put him in C tier. Last but certainly not least, we've got this handsome lad right here. No, ew, not that picture. Use a different one. Okay, that's better. Sorry. Chrollo is in much the same position as Shizuku. Alone, headed for tier 1, surrounded by death flags, and not ready to fight Hisoka. However, there are a couple things that, for me, give Chrollo better odds of survival. For one, Chrollo is Chrollo. He's much more combat-oriented than Shizuku, and much smarter than this girl who I'm convinced has rocks where her brain should be. He doesn't like having a margin of error, so when he says he's not ready to fight Hisoka, he doesn't mean he'll lose. He's just not 100% sure he'll win, and he wants to be before the fight. For another, Twink Jesus here has his eyes on a prize to get him ready to fight Hisoka. If that were all there was to consider, I might put him in the A tier, but Chrollo does not belong there. This man is ready to throw his life away. He is unraveling. When Togashi draws panels like this, it's never a good sign for any character. Losing one more comrade, like, say, Benolanov, could be what sends him over the edge. Also, he is very much wandering into Hisoka's territory. Tier 1 is significantly smaller than the other tiers, and there's every possibility that he could just run into Hisoka by chance and get killed. So yeah, if this was anyone but Chrollo, they'd be going in the C tier, but Chrollo simply has that dog in him, so I'm gonna have to lay him to rest in the B tier. Anyway, all that said and done, here's the final list. I'm sure many of you disagree or have thoughts, because Hunter x Hunter is far too complicated a series for anyone to agree on anything, and that's the way I like it. If you enjoyed this yap session, feel free to leave a comment. Reading you guys' comments is honestly the best part of my day. I hope you'll join me for my next yap session, just as I hope you'll have a wonderful day.